What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Move Better Mondays. Today we are going to talk about knee stability and specifically how to improve your knee stability. Now, over the last couple of weeks we did talk about knee stability itself and how to build knee stability in trying to essentially get rid of pain. So it's more or less just trying to improve the functionality of that knee so that you're not getting that knee pain that we were struggling with that was keeping you from getting in your runs, your workouts, even your activities that you normally do, playing sports, whatever. But before we do that, guys, I would really appreciate if you could hit that subscribe button and let me know what you guys think at the end of the episode. And so the first thing we want to discuss when we are talking about knee stability is essentially understanding why the knee is so important and why we need it to be stable. So to do that, I'm gonna draw up some basic physics stuff so that you can better understand, this is the wrong side, so that you can basically understand what it is that's actually going on in the body for that matter. It doesn't really matter that it's at the knee, it could be at the hip, it could be at the shoulder. Everything basically functions off these same principles. So the first thing you need to understand is that when you are doing anything, so if I'm trying to generate a force, so let's say I'm trying to throw pressure into the ground. You guys can see that, right? Let me get a little bit closer. So if I'm trying to put pressure into the ground, what I'm trying to do is make sure that the force that I'm pushing from here all the way down to here is going straight down into the ground or as straight as possible. What happens is, if your knee is not stable and your knee shifts in or shifts out, what's actually happening is you're creating two vectors. So I know I just use vectors. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, but vectors are basically just the angle of force that's going in. It's just that basic lining of force. That's probably the worst technical description of it. And I'm sure anybody there who actually understands physics is probably screaming their head up. 1 second. Okay, Google, what's a vector? Okay, that was a terrible explanation. There's no geometric, screw it. It's just, it's some line that force goes straight through down. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Basically, once the force goes straight down here, what you're trying to do is try to maximize that amount of force that you're going straight down. Now, if you shift off to another angle and you start basically creating new angles by having your knee tuck in. So let's say, instead of your knee being straight, so let's say your hip, your knee, and your foot, your knee shifts over here, so it's now, that was a terrible idea, right over here. What's actually happening is we've created another angle that's going to be happening at the hip, happening at the knee. So what's happening here is that we've got two vectors, one going down and then one going out to the side. So now we have to create this force, so we have to go down and out to the side. So let's say that with my leg I can push 100 pounds. Okay, for argument's sake, let's say it was 100 pounds. If I was to put it straight into the ground, I would only need 100 pounds of force to be able to generate some kind of movement. If I now create another vector and I have to go down and out to the side, well, I'm only gonna be able to push with 100, but because it's going off to the side, this force doesn't end up being 100 when it hits the ground. It's gonna be somewhere in the 80s, 85, so I'm gonna be losing a lot of power. Now, out of that, just from that alone, we've lost power. Now, if we also look at the effects of having poor knee stability, notice how small this board is? I can actually reach right around, or I may just have long arms. Anyway, what that basically means is that if we're able to do this, we're actually generating more power. And the other thing we're doing is we're actually keeping our knee in line. So we're avoiding the pain, which is what we spoke about the last couple of weeks, which I'm gonna put a link to right above here if you guys haven't seen it. So if you are in this category and you're losing force, now everyone is to some extent in this. There's no one that's actually straight. The way our joints actually work is through rotation. Joints actually don't just move in a straight line, they actually rotate around each other. And that rotation is going to be limited based on your ability to keep it as straight as possible. The more rotation you have, the more it shears out and kind of swings out wide, and the less rotation you have, the straighter it goes. What we want to do is you want to keep all of our movements to be somewhat straight. So as much as we can, get this and not get this, which is going to cause more of an arc and all that tension that you're getting in that knee. as a result of having it shift out to the side here. So basically, that essentially describes why we want knee stability. It's going to help us get more out of the work that we're trying to do. So if we're pushing with 100 pounds, we're actually getting 100 pounds into the ground, not getting only 80, 75, 60, whatever, depending on how far our knee's shooting out. This is also limiting our ability to actually move and get to new depths and be able to go and reach and produce and actually generate, not even produce, but actually accomplish better movements. So let's take a hockey player, for example, something I work with a lot of you know, that's the people that are right up on that wall right there. There's a lot of them, Jesus, a lot of hockey players right over there. Now, many of those athletes that I just mentioned on the board will be more than likely coming to see me to get better at their sport. They're gonna try to generate more power. They're gonna try to be stronger on their skates. They're gonna try to be more mobile. They're gonna try to improve their ability to perform what they like to do on the ice. Stick handling, shooting, passing, all that stuff is improved, and skating as well. It's all improved by their ability to be stronger and more stable on the ice. It's allowing them to balance because they're on skates, and it's a lot harder to balance because you're always sliding around. So you wanna be able to be structurally sound to be able to make all those other maneuvers happen, especially when you've got pressures from the game, speed, and all that stuff coming in. Now, one of the things that they all like to come to me for is knee stability. Knee stability basically is going to be, as I mentioned, that ability to generate force and drive it into the ice that's gonna allow them to move forward a lot better. It's gonna help them with their speed, it's gonna help them with their stability, and it's basically gonna transfer into their ability to play better hockey. So that essentially holds true for every sport. Let's take the opposite spectrum. Let's go to someone who's a runner. Runner's another sport where knee stability is often kind of not really thought about, but it's actually one of the reasons why, if you're watching, have used those knee bands that I see all the time, those little bands that go around right below that knee. Essentially, that's all caused by a lack of knee stability, and that's why this episode is so crucial for you. And essentially what this episode will be is a foundation and a template that we're going to be able to build off of, that's going to allow us to add on through subsequent episodes and basically lay out essentially a path, a roadmap to go from no knee stability to tons of knee stability. It's basically just going to be discussing the foot, discussing the hip, how to get that knee to be a lot more stable. So what I wanted to start off by talking a bit about today was, I'm gonna erase this again, and I know I'm gonna regret this because my hand's gonna be purple. But basically, a couple of the factors that are really gonna come into play when we do discuss knee stability is we have to really look at how the body is gonna be able to recruit the muscles that are necessary for knee stability. So what will happen if you are standing? When you are standing, what will happen every time you take that step, every time you take that stride, every time you take that jump, every time you land? There's a lot of things that are happening throughout the body, and this is all caused by the kind of interaction between all of them and that chain that leads all the way up. And initially it starts off as something that's very basic, and then as we start getting more detailed, it becomes more detailed. But I'm gonna leave all that stuff out, try to keep it as basic for you so that you can really understand this and kind of wrap your head around that concept that's making all of this stuff and everything that I'm gonna be doing back here a lot more digestible, tangible, and you're gonna actually be able to follow it and make sense of it. So the first thing we need to understand is what's happening every time we hit the ground. So let's say we end up coming down here, we land, our foot lands on the ground. So we got the foot, the knee, and the hip, and for this sake, I'm gonna throw in the back. So I don't know how I'm gonna pull this off. That is outrageously impressive. Foot, knee. So here's basically what's happening. When your foot hits the ground, your foot is gonna pick up a signal. Based on if it's flat, in or out, it's going to shoot that signal up, and as it works its way up, each of these segments are gonna have a certain degree of error that they're gonna introduce into that movement. Now, once the error becomes too big, the knee shifts in, you lose power on that stride. Now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to maintain that nice straight, I don't know why I just tried to draw with the cap on, that made no sense. That was pretty funny actually. Now, if we can manage to keep a straight line of force going straight down, we don't have that knee coming in, or as straight as we possibly can, the force is gonna be much greater. So our main interest when we talk about knee stability is keeping all of this nice and straight. If we can do that, everything works out just fine. If we struggle on one of these areas, it needs to be addressed before we can even move on to any real exercise. Now, what I like to do is I like to almost shut everybody down, bring everybody back to the basics, and kind of reboot the system, if you would. Now, the way I do that is I get everybody on the ground and I basically start us off from fresh. So the first initial step is going to be starting on the ground. Now, this process is basically a 3-part process. The first process is start on the ground. Number 2, get on your legs and be double leg standing. And number 3, single leg stance. Now, what's actually happening is that every single time we introduce something else or we introduce a level of difficulty, there's more pieces that are gonna come into this puzzle that we need to make sure we have aligned to be able to move forward. A lot of individuals just go from basically nothing to trying to stabilize on one leg, which makes no sense because there's so many things that are happening at the hip, at the ankle, at the core level that if they're not tied in properly, do not carry forward. And once again, if you guys haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button below. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys next week.